Sourcing Podcast with your hosts, Martin and Adam. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Adam. Time for another episode.
Yes, always look
Which,
forward to
which
Sundays.
episode is this?
This should be episode 40. So
Wow.
it's been,
I realize we have quite a few episodes already.
yeah.
It's amazing.
I'm still behind on putting everything out to the proper channels, but I've been trying to stream on LinkedIn, X, and Twitch, I believe, so that when we have the episodes, people can actually just see them on any of those, and you can see the recordings there. But there's obviously people that are waiting for the RSS feeds to catch up, so that should be done. To this weekend is administration weekend, which is the end of the month. Pay everybody, pay all the bills, pay all the credit cards, and that sort of stuff. so it'll be part of the cleanup and maintenance job. And how was your week, Martin?
Good. Lot to do. Interesting things. Few interesting calls with potential clients. So yeah, it was quite a good week.
Yeah, I've also had quite a busy week. We also had the workshop that we finished, right? Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
So that was excellent. Getting into the Ralph loop, and it's getting interesting how we have to have workshops that now have to explain how event modeling fits in with everything else that's changing. But that's, again, like I said before, it's nice to have something that stands the test of time and the shifting technical winds that we experience. It's still applicable. And so what else happened? We had a bit of my camera issues before we started recording. I was fiddling too much with OBS and lost my camera feed, trying to fix a slight delay with the virtual camera. And now it's sort of fixed. I think it's fixed.
Yeah. So what was your impression of the workshop? I think it was a fairly good workshop.
Yeah, I like them. I'm always, given the workshops that I used to do were, 1 week, 8 hours a day for sometimes, and they were done, once or twice a year. They're quite intense. I mean, obviously they were way more expensive. I think they were like over $2,000 to attend, but then you got an entire week.
Yeah.
And we tried to do event modeling for the first half, first 2 days, and then half a day on the Wednesday was when you switched from event modeling to event sourcing, and then finished off with event sourcing on Thursday and Friday. So having 2 days, 2 half days is a lot easier for people to attend. So I actually like it. And during the workshop, I said that there's no way that we can get to everything. So feel free to reach out and we can continue offline and maybe make little follow-ups. And I've been considering maybe just allowing people to come back to the subsequent workshops because they're already paid, to see if they can address some of the things that they may have missed, or maybe we cover something that we didn't have a chance to, because honestly, there's a lot to go over in just 4 hours every day. That's a total of 8 hours, and you have everything for event modeling, event sourcing, and how artificial intelligence is affecting those, and how all the tooling is changing because of that. So there's a lot to go over. So I think it went well, but I'm always wanting to do better. And one of the challenges that I have is I don't want to have a preset workshop. I like them to be as interactive as possible. And that means opening things up to the audience, which gives them a better sense of value, but then it may stray from, the core concepts that we need to get. So it's always a balancing act when the workshop is only that. And I think I like to see the workshops as the beginning of a good relationship for the future, to always be there for those people. And I think if the workshop is really just the beginning, if you're serious about event modeling and event sourcing, that is just a jump start to a long-term relationship with us and the community, and you're basically jump starting your whole journey, because none of these things are things you're going to learn in a day or a week or a month. You have to unlearn many years of previous patterns. So this is You took a workshop on learning to ride a bike, and it's the workshop's not going to teach you to ride the bike. It's you know think of a half hour class. Maybe people learn to ride bikes quicker, but something more harder to do, like drawing or sculpting or carpentry or
Yeah.
any serious skill, you're not going to go to a workshop and become a skilled carpenter in 2 days. And so,
Yeah.
even if you're a good sculptor from clay, you can't transition that skill to woodworking. Maybe you have some advantages because you have good spatial ability, spatial thinking ability, but for the most part, you're working in a new medium. And that's kind of how I see event modeling and event sourcing. You're really having to move to a new medium. You used to work with forms over data, CRUD systems. Maybe even if you did things that weren't CRUD, behavioral systems, you still used a canonical model underneath. So you still had a persistence layer that was highly coupled. You need to move to a new world where you're not working in a highly coupled
Yeah.
world. So, in essence, workshops are something that I always want to improve from and do that next workshop even better. But
Yeah.
then what did I miss that I covered in the last workshop? So it's a very dynamic process for me. Always has been, as we learn better approaches. So and we've had people come back to the workshop to for refreshers just because the landscape had changed so much. We adopted better ways of working. We dropped aggregates. We dropped upcaster functions. There's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of things that get introduced as better ways to work, or at least more options that you may have at your disposal when you're working with event sourcing. So it's very dynamic, and so I'm always of a split personality after a workshop. I love the things that we covered. I really hate that we couldn't cover everything under the sun, but that's
Yeah.
impossible.
Absolutely not possible. And I mean, my January workshop, this was 3 days, and even there you couldn't
Yeah.
cover everything.
No, even after that whole week, there's still people that had legitimate subjects that they wanted to cover, and
Yeah.
it touches on so many aspects of software development that you do want to get to them at some point. But I guess in essence, you want to get the core concepts and the um, type of the type of thinking that you need. The mental attitude towards solutions has to change. I think that's the
Yeah.
best goal out of the workshop. So I try to relate our experiences with how we run projects, which what that really means to you if you're going to adopt this. Hopefully, being able to show some of the thinking and working together with people, answering the questions, and hopefully people pick up that core attitude change, the perspective change that you need, and that's going to carry you forward because the little details that you learn during the workshop will be strengthened by practice. But the only way to do that is to have the right idea and the right incentive in your head for why you're doing it. Without that, the practice is a little bit more meaningless. If you're just going through the motions, it
Yeah.
doesn't connect on a deep level.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I mean, I don't know, you probably find the same, even like 3D
Yes, of course.
workshops. And
Yeah, of course. I mean, I did a whole lot of workshops, and there was not a single workshop where I would say, okay, this was perfect. I will do it exactly the same time next one.
yeah.
So there's always something to improve. But what I found quite interesting was we had two different groups in the workshop. There was
Yes.
a group that had absolutely no prior experience in anything, and
Yes.
there was a group who already tried it and were basically coming to the workshop to see, okay,
Yeah.
it worked. It worked a little bit too well. Where are the loopholes? I want to see where it falls apart. That was a really quite interesting mix of people.
Well, that's a challenge, though. When you have such a, it's always a challenge for us. Not, I'm saying that this particular workshop is, but that's always the challenge because event modeling and event sourcing solve so much for so many different people and so many,
Yeah,
in many different roles that finding a common ground is challenging but doable. That's the best part. I mean, it's hard to make a SQL workshop and try to appeal to non-technical people, right? That's pretty hard. But with
yeah,
event modeling and event sourcing, you can make it work, which is what I find quite challenging but doable and rewarding when you actually have the workshop and you have You see people that are highly technical already know some things, highly technical plus they already know event sourcing, and then you have the same side on the business side. So the same
Yeah.
thing on the business side. So we had at least one person from the project management product owner level, and they were able to follow all the way through. So um, yeah, it's really, I mean, it's a good challenge for technical people anyway, myself included, to be able to always put things in terms that has the greater audience to understand. And
Yeah.
one of the best things about event sourcing and event modeling is that you can always bridge that gap for every concept,
Yeah.
which was fun. So I always
Yeah.
notice those things.
And what I found also interesting is we really spent the majority of the time in event modeling. So,
Yeah,
and because the people wanted to know more about event modeling, the questions were circling around event modeling, and I really like that because this is the foundation. If you understand this once, you can build event source system. You can use AI for that.
yeah.
But really getting into the mindset and learning how to do event modeling, this is a little bit harder. And I think this is where the workshops really shine. If this is the only thing they take away from the workshop, they can figure out the rest. I've seen this multiple times.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps event modeling is the thing that allows the concepts to stick, and the fundamental change in how, in your perspective to data and how systems
Yeah.
work. If that gets you to see things with a fresh perspective, that's, I think, the goals of the workshop have been met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they ask the typical questions. Wait a second. Does this really mean if I have a green sticky note, every green sticky note is a table? What about all this redundancy? These typical questions. I always enjoy this a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So we had definitely some of those, but yeah, and I mean, there was also, I mean, we can segue this to some questions that kind of came up during in our Discord. Which, if you're not a member yet, make sure to join on the eventmodeling.org site. There's a resources page, and you can join the Discord community there. We have over 1,000 people that are working on this stuff every day, and these concepts come up and questions come up around them. So yeah, but anyway, onto the SQL side. Someone actually said, what happens if you store events in a table? And that's been visited over and over many times as people try to adopt event sourcing, but didn't have the buy-in from management to put in an event store database or even a key value store
That is
or
typically
anything.
the starting point, right? I mean,
Yeah.
no company buys an event store right out of the gates. Typically, that
Yeah.
doesn't happen.
Yeah. So it was interesting to see um, some people bring this topic back. And I mean, we discussed this maybe last year on the podcast, I think, where if you were to only use a SQL database for an event source system, it would be, it's kind of an interesting data modeling challenge, right? Because I don't know if you remember, but I would put a table for each type of event, and as you're getting events in your system, people are hitting submit on different forms. Those events are getting placed into their appropriate tables with an ID that's ever increasing. But then you need this master table that orders all events, no matter what table they're in,
Yeah.
together. So that master table is kind of tricky because if you want to be very purist about relational databases, you need a column with a foreign key to each individual table, and the rest
Tricky.
of the columns, well, that's one way. Hear me out. And the rest of the columns to be null, right? Let's just, the very simplistic first approach way to do it. I don't. I want things to be very statically typed. Referential integrity has to be extremely good. All this kind of stuff. So you'd have an ID that's ever growing on the master table, but then you'd have a foreign key in each of the columns to each of the tables. And when you need to add a new event, you need to add a new column, new event type. You need to add a new
Yeah.
column for that. And I don't know what if you take this to an extreme and you have to scale with this, and you need to not think of streams, and how do you do the indexing across all orders versus one order? I think it becomes a little bit easier for a database person to understand what we're trying to do without aggregates, right? If you throw away the aggregates and you're really looking at implementing any index that you need, for example, in the case of our continuing example of the multiple orders invariance versus just
Yeah.
single order, on this table structure, what would that indexing look like?
Interesting question.
Right? Because you have a couple of, like, three tables maybe, where order is maybe more than that, but 4 or 5. What events would be on each of these things? Like, you would have order opened, order closed, item added, item removed, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And for individual orders, you may have extra events, such as a paid method or paid for the order, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So now, if you have this invariant for not all orders that are open not exceeding X, how would you do that with tables to get an index that would allow you to get the data you need very quickly for calculating all open orders?
I don't know.
No,
No.
I don't know either. Yeah, it's interesting. It sort of starts to show where maybe databases, RDBMS, this was made a long time ago, 15 years ago, the point that temporal aspects are really horrible with SQL. So I think you quickly realize that you have to live outside of the SQL indexing world, or you have a very fancy, expensive database technology that puts this in as some expensive add-on to be able to do that. So yeah, the indexing to do those things would have to live outside the database. So there's not, you're really, reaching the limit of what the database is supposed to do, because how do you really limit orders that are closed if you don't have, just run index? I mean, you probably would need a second, other tables like projections, the materialized views, all open orders, or just have orders that are with their status, and you can index the status if it's closed or open.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Good thing to think about. And I think people that do have the time, to experiment, change your events provider from different types of event stores and make one of them a database. And I think most people that really want to learn event sourcing should have 2 or 3, maybe 4 different event providers as to test the technologies. For example, I have IndexedDB sometimes as my store of events. That's just the application is a web page itself, and it just goes to the browser's key value store database. Or you can do the file system access from a browser and hit actual files. You can have an event store like Exonic or any other. You can also
use Git. I use Git as an event.
You can use. I did that before, and there was some weird. It does work, but when I did this back in 2011, 2010, I got some weird caching file system level stuff that made event sourcing with Git a little bit tricky. I don't think that's the problem anymore, but back then, I remember attempting this. This is well over 10, 12 years ago now.
Yeah.
There was issues. Surprisingly, I was quite surprised. It might be some things that I was experiencing with Docker or some other technologies that got in the way, but it didn't work as promised. But that's interesting. Okay, so in Git, what would you suggest the structure be? I mean, you just keep...
I did really experiment with this. So I had different structures. One was I used orphan branches as streams, basically. And that worked quite well.
Okay. Now, what's the advantage of using orphan branches versus any other kinds of branches, or just having branching
Oh,
non-existent.
you of course you can also do. There are many ways to do this. This was just an experiment, but using orphan branches, you basically what is an orphan branch is just a branch without any prior history. So you basically
Yeah,
start from scratch. You can for every stream, if you close the book, you can just create a new orphan branch, and then you can have a new stream. So that fits quite well. That also worked at scale. So I tried this at scale. That worked quite well.
yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to slice that problem with Git,
Of
and
course,
both of us are fans of Git, and we've both trained people in Git over the years. And if you look at the different ways you can view a storage of events and how you could have it on a set of files that Git manages. So you mentioned one that if you check out a branch, you're obviously only getting a stream of the events that are there,
yeah,
right? And then, however, there's other ways that you can do this where you have maybe one master branch of events, and all you're doing is putting commits every single time that you are adding a new event.
sure.
Um, is there anything that you're missing there in terms of indexing or accessing things? Because Git's pretty good at creating all sorts of helper indexes in the back end, and the tools are extremely mature for being able to navigate. Well, it's built for code changes, but here we just have data changes. Um, so is there, compare maybe um, branches that are not orphaned, but maybe they go off of some common points on a timeline branch, or
Sure.
I don't know. What would you think of like the alternate approaches to using Git? I'm
Oh,
actually generally curious as well.
you mean other approaches within Git or
Well,
approaches?
you mentioned one within Git, which was
Yeah.
orphaned branches. What other approaches would you do or have you
Oh,
done?
I experimented with stashes. So
Oh yeah,
most people don't know it, but stashes are also branches, just invisible branches, and you can use them. You can use stashes for that. That also works. And
yeah,
of course, you can also use just one branch and work with branching of this one single branch at certain points in time. That also works. So it depends a little bit on what you're doing. But the great thing with Git is it's super fast. It's extremely fast. So you can build tooling on top of Git and just use Git as the persistence mechanism. And I mean, I never used this in any real project, but a few years ago, I did quite a few experiments with that, and it was fascinating how well that worked.
yeah. I mean, like I said, Git is quite good at indexing stuff. So my next question is like, if you're using the proper approach to event sourcing, and you're not bringing in aggregates or substreams, and you just have all events can be accessed in whatever ways possible. So
Yeah.
if you have something that is getting invariance across what you would consider an entity, such as an order, and you want to look at multiple orders, or you want to look at subsets of the events, how would the indexing and the
You
or
can
yeah,
you
like
can
the better things that Git does, searching for things throughout its history.
yes,
How does
yes,
that help
exactly.
you?
You could easily implement DCB on top of Git. So, for example, what you could do is you could use Git log minus S. Git log is extremely
Pickaxe,
fast,
right?
extremely optimized. With minus S, you can search for certain types. So this would give you all events of a certain type within the blink of an eye in your whole history. And it
Yeah,
doesn't. You can search a million commits
yeah.
with this.
That's called the pickaxe search, right?
Yeah,
The dash
exactly.
S. It's a weird parameter. You put dash capital S, and you immediately follow it by an open single quote
Yes,
and put
but
in the
it's
string there.
you have to get used to it. But it's
Yeah,
blazing fast. It's crazy how
yeah.
fast it is.
Because the regular Git grep or log searches just search for the messages in the commits, but to actually search through the changes, the actual diffs, where things are included or excluded, that's the dash S search, the pickaxe
Yes.
search. And
So
of course,
you could easily implement TCP on top of that.
well,
Easy.
the other interesting thing is that in those searches, you get to pick the starting point of the search. If you want the whole repository to be searched, you need a dash dash all, right? Or
Yes.
dash capital A in
Yes.
in the search in the, well, isn't that part of git log anyway, the pickaxe? I think it is that, right? So you would still
Yes.
have to do a dash p, which is the patch, to actually see the difference.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Exactly. But you
unless you know what you're looking for and the whole thing is the event, then you don't have to do that patch. If you just get the reference, and then from there you can get whatever the name of the event
yeah.
is to be shown using git show, right?
Exactly, and you could work with tags, for example. Same as Axonic tags the events, you could tag your commits with certain tags to implement DCB. So there's so many ways to do that.
Well, yeah, tags are just branches with an object added as well, right? It's like an immutable. They're very similar. I mean, everything is just a pointer to a
Yeah,
commit,
exactly.
but the tag is
A branch that
the
doesn't
tag
move.
doesn't advance with your further commits. The branch
Yes.
sort of tracks as you add commits one on top of another. The
Yeah.
branch moves forward, but the tag is something that on purpose is stationary. So yeah, I mean, how would you have? Okay, well, devil's advocate here. Why would you use tags in Git if it does indexing on its own already? Um,
I don't know. That just
because
came
you'd
to
have to have
mind.
a special format for the tags, because you can't have them the same name, right? You can't have, like, I mean, what would be a tag name in an Exonic? A tag name would be um, orders, total order calculation index,
Something
right?
like that. Yes, exactly.
But in Git, you can't have that hitting every single event because that's a unique name. So now you'd have to add some sort of a naming scheme to the tag,
Yes.
where we have a dash zero, dash one, dash whatever, right? As you went through, and then you could. Well, I don't know if you can do a tag list with a pattern match. Can you do a tag list with pattern match? I guess you just do a tag list and then just grep through it
You can?
and
Yeah, you can.
do a regex for everything, starting with orders, order total calculation, right?
Yeah.
Cross
Um,
order total, or whatever it is that we were talking about.
I mean, that,
Right.
that would be some nice experiments to just see how far you can get with this. But I think it's pretty. So I was pretty far, but at some point I had to stop.
We
Just
we only have so many hours in the day, and even
exactly.
with AI, I'm reaching the next ceiling of what I want to experiment with. There's always like so much your brain can process, no matter how much AI does for you when you're researching these topics, right? But I
Yeah,
think,
but
sorry, go ahead.
what I think is people oftentimes don't really explore those tools deep enough. They just
That's
say,
right.
okay, Git is a version control, and then they move on.
Yeah.
This is for many tools. If you really dive deep into them, and Git is a perfect example for this. You can stay on the surface, then it's fine. But if you really go into the details, it's fascinating what's going on under the hood. And
Yeah,
for
yeah.
many tools, that happens.
I mean, that was one of the best discoveries that I had, was just learning Git for the first time. I was just floored how amazing it was. Git is actually one of the reasons that I switched to Linux from Windows and other operating systems. I remember this. I said I'm not doing any other operating system after this, and it was because I was using Git within msysGit within Windows.
Oh, horrible, horrible.
But I mean, I didn't know any better, because at
Yeah,
work I was always forced to use Windows
yeah,
ever since '98, I guess. And finally, nearly 10 years later, um, I'm working with Git, and I really love how it works. And then I looked, and like, oh, msysGit is always whatever amount of versions behind the latest Git version. So like, okay, well, I guess it exists on Linux, so I should just make a VM at
yeah.
work so I could work with Git. And so I cloned the same repo into Git on my Linux VM, and every single command that I hit was instantaneous feedback. I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's a big difference.
what?
This is
The sysgit
what?
was like a
What is
slug.
going
I
on?
was like, why was I? And the same thing happened with why I won't use GitLab versus Git-T. And actually, James Nugent pointed out that GitLab is this hot mess of gross Ruby on Rails code. I'm like, okay, maybe. And I remember setting up the company and saying, we need a central repository, and I want it to be self-hosted. I wanted to make sure that our client's data lives on things we own. We don't put it to Google, to Amazon, to whoever. We own where the source code lives, and for some cases it's Canadian soil, for some cases it's US, for some cases it's whatever. So we needed to really have good control of where the source code would live, what
Yeah.
jurisdiction, make sure it's not crossing any boundaries. And so I remember setting up GitLab, and it was okay. I can take the minimum droplet on DigitalOcean. It was kind of like, oh, this is super slow. Okay, I'll get the next one up, get some more RAM. And then James Nugent told me, like, no, man, that's a steaming pile of garbage. Try GOGS, which was later forked to be Git-T because of maintainers having a difference of opinion of what should be done, how open it should be, and all that sort of stuff. I forget the exact history, but so the predecessor to Git-T, it was written in Go, and it took like 5 megabytes of memory to run. It
Yeah.
had the same features, and I could run it on the lowest of whatever VPS I had, and it was instantaneous. So I'm like, there's no way I'm doing GitLab. So we've been on Git-T ever since, just based on the fundamental principle of knowing how fast Git is. Why would you put the bloat here? And it was all obviously catch up with GitHub, be on par with GitHub, and get all these features in no matter what kind of backend and technology you used. And it was horrible. So I've been super happy with Git-T. It's always been lightning fast, just the features that you need. And of course, I don't subscribe to the PR stuff and pull requests and all that. I'm more of like a person that manages release candidates, just how the Linux kernel is managed, and being very particular about how I treat Git. And so this minimalistic approach was really good. And I still, to this day, we don't have any GitHub private repos for our clients, unless they themselves provide that, and we just do access. But anything that we create for clients, they're sitting on our servers. Git-T is pretty much on par with GitHub features, aside the flowery ones that kind of code for you and all the AI integrations they're shoving in there. So I'll let AI be AI where it needs to be. I don't want it to be baked in everywhere, because then you get different opinions of different AIs. So anyway, back to the main point, going from msysGit to just running Git on Linux. I got the latest version of Git. It ran like blazingly fast. So I remember that moment in time. It's like, you know what, forget it. I'm full screen Linux VM for work, and have a shared directory with the stupid Windows host for whatever I need to transfer to other people or through email or whatever. And also I experimented, and I think it worked quite well with seamless Windows. So that means the Windows in the VM were shown on the host OS like they're native Windows. And so you could, no pun intended, but yeah, you could work with both sides anywhere. But I found myself working 100% in Linux, bearing the brunt of stupid Windows underneath, because that's all that company's, sysadmins were that wasn't their job. So I'm like, I don't need you to help me. I can find my answers on Stack Overflow for anything I need. I don't need quote unquote support. And so that was the beginning of the end for Windows for me. I was already using it at home for different things, but in terms of professionally, even at clients where I was a independent consultant coming in, I would always just have a Linux machine with me anyway. And what I would have is I would have a Windows VM instead, sitting on those for those times that I needed to be like, oh yeah, we're using this in Windows. Or like, sure, I'll just spin up my VM and do that. And actually it was better, because I was never hampered by snapshotting or anything like that. I could have the network turned off for the Windows VM, so it wouldn't get spooked by these stupid updates or anything like that. And not only that, it would boot up much faster, because I would suspend the VM session. And so next time I, brought my laptop and just restarted, and Windows would continue on from wherever it left off. Yeah. And, especially when everything else, like downloading files and everything else, was done by the host Linux system, I could have everything ready and the shared folders would have those things ready. I could do whatever I needed in Windows without attaching it to the network. If I was sending something back, it was going um, through the host system, Linux, and
Yeah.
that was fine. So that was a really I wish I did it years earlier. Honestly, I mean, I wish I did it. At least in the early days of Git in 05, 06, when I should have gotten into it a little bit earlier, and would have been a lot better. But yeah, that was a start of opening up my eyes to this whole open source world that you can do way more than what people were. I was under the impression that things were impossible because, oh well, it's Windows, everything will work, you just don't have to worry about it. And then when I actually started to dig deeper, it's like these are all lies. These people are like keeping me in this, like the corporate, the regular people, they're keeping me kind of, so that there's not too many detractors that can keep working the same way that they did. And so the minute that I finally, the Matrix took the red pill and saw what what the reality was of open source, it's like, and why would I support the people that kept me ignorant on purpose? There's no
Yeah.
way. So I went fully out of Windows 100% forever,
I have
especially.
a
Yeah.
I have a few clients where I need to work also on Windows VMs, and I really hate it with a passion. Working with Windows is really it gives me physical pain because it's so slow. But what I really realize is nowadays those boundaries between the systems they blur quite a lot, because what happens is when I'm on the Windows VM, what I do is I open the terminal and I start Claude Code, and that's what I do there. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter if you do it on a Mac or if you do it on Linux. The terminal is the only difference between those terminals is speed.
Yeah.
It's quite slow on Windows,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
exactly. I just, one thing that I taught me, and I think it was, I already had this problem with corporations, and I got hurt by having an amazing experience on the Amiga and all that, and having the corporate overlord screw that up. The guy sold off Commodore for pennies just because he wanted to retire, and he didn't care about what that technology did for the world. It was abandoned, and so for me, that was it. I'm not trusting anyone. I don't care how shiny Apple is. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Same thing, Microsoft. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. I've seen this before. I want something where nothing, everything will stand the test of time, which is kind of how event modeling got to be. It's like, oh, you could just have an add-in for like Event Store DB or this. Like, no, no, it's open source, open ideas. This will last forever. I'm not putting anyone in the same situation as Commodore put people in their situations, how Microsoft put them in those situations. The idea is that event modeling isn't a proprietary thing, and that attitude carries through. I think how our company continues to work. And yeah, I mean, if other people have their situations, they're in a corporate structure where they have a contract with Microsoft for their back end in Azure. And well, of course, we work with them. We help them as much as we can. And we have Windows computers and Windows VMs for the consultants that are working there because that's the only way to do the work. And
Yeah.
that's fine. But there's no way that I'm making our company work with any of those handcuffs around our hands. No way.
Yeah.
Keep the freedom for ourselves so we can jump from company to company depending on what they have. Their operating systems and their constraints are just bolt-ons for that project that we have to have, and there may be others for another client, and there may be none for the ones that come in without any of their tech stack, the brand new startups or whatever. Then they get the full benefit of having something that's open source, that's Linux only from the ground up, and they know that they're going to not have any of these challenges with vendors switching their terms, especially legislation too now. I mean, they're even threatening
Yeah.
Linux operating systems for age verification in California, which is just insane. Like, you want to like mandate that all operating systems have to have an age verification? Are you crazy? Anyway.
Why is that? What's the
I
reason?
think it's got to do with gaming. I think even Valve got sued by New York by
Mm.
saying that there's aspect of gambling. First of all, there's no payouts in Valve. Everything is just for like you get a different prize and game that has different swords and different outfits or whatever. That's it.
Yeah.
And any of those things are age restricted by 18 or over anyway. And then what about all the other stuff like EA and all the other giant companies out there doing the same thing? They're totally not listed. They're not sued at all. So
Yeah, what's the difference?
there's something about Valve that they hate, and I think it's actually, if I would guess, it's EA and the other big companies lobbying any congressperson in any state that'll go ahead and push this through. So there's a bunch of lobby
Yeah.
from the companies that are butthurt, like EA and all the AAA games places that Valve is slowly eating into their stuff, right? They're finally got the Steam Deck and all the stuff, letting go of Windows as a games requirement. You look at the Proton project and the Vulkan project for the drivers. That's even helping Mac people now, right?
Yeah.
Mac people have to thank Linux for bringing in games that they couldn't play before, and that's all through when Valve started in '98 and finally gained the language layer translation for the drivers, the driver translations from to be Windows compliant on Linux. That started 5-6 years ago, and then the game translations just skyrocketed. Like there's almost no games except for multiplayer action games that require the anti-cheat stuff. Everything works on Linux, and in a lot of cases, I would say sometimes majority of the cases, depending on game type, it's faster on Linux than it is on Windows, even with a translation layer, just because the bloat of the OS isn't there, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm quite anyway. How does this relate to event sourcing and event modeling? It's that openness. It's that ability to ride out all this crap I've just been talking about, the platforms, the decisions from different operating systems, etc. One thing that I know 10 years from now is that I can still describe an operating, a solution, a system through something that's worked for thousands of years. Here's by example of what it is. Here's the information that the system manages, and no matter what happens to AI, that's it. I mean, back to how AI interprets this. Everyone's still talking about these specifications, right, for AI. It's like, well, we've already been doing specifications for over a decade.
It's the new thing, spec-driven development. What are you talking about?
I mean, even before event sourcing caught on, people that are doing behavior-driven development and specification by example, like Goiko and all these people, I mean, they should be really pissed off because these people are like, oh, look what we discovered. It's like, are you kidding me? Open up the Goose Book or any of these other things. It's been written about. it's why we based event modeling on those principles, because it's, gee, I wonder why, if AI seems to think that this format is good. It's been trained on how humans communicate, right?
I've seen a video. Yes, I think it was yesterday, talking about is your code base ready for AI? And the big thing those people discovered is no, it isn't, because we need modules. Modularity is the thing. So, all right, really?
They're slowly discovering everything we're trying to tell them up front. It's like, okay, we'll let you stumble and fall and get scraped up for a couple of years, maybe 5 years, or hopefully you won't go out of business in that time. But we're telling you from the beginning, just do this and you're done.
Yeah, but it's really fascinating because now people discover, okay, modularity is a thing. But now ask a developer, how do you write a good module for AI? What is a module? What does it even mean to have a module?
Yeah.
You can ask 3 developers and you will get at least 5 answers for this, least.
Yeah.
People don't know what modules are. They have no idea. What modularity, how do you do that? Well, I program against an interface. Yes. No. So that's not enough.
Yeah. They don't understand the coupling and where it's worse, and not just data, but I think what we cover on our podcast is that the coupling is really self-evident when you compare who steps on whose toes when people are working simultaneously on the same project. That screams at you where that is. But now it's kind of hidden behind AI. Oh, the different AI agents can't work together for some reason. Oh, I wonder why. If you took the time to code things yourself and looked at where you're stepping on the toes of your teammates, you would actually understand, because you went through the pain itself. But looking at the AI be in pain isn't enough. So it's going to take a while for that realization.
Yeah. No, no, know what I did this weekend as an experiment? I started 10 Ralph loops in parallel on the
Hmm.
system. I just
Mm,
wanted to see what happens. Guess what happened? Each loop picked up one slice, and after one iteration, everybody was done because there were no more slices to be
yeah.
done.
And that's what we did in real life. And people are saying, no, you can't
Exactly.
do this. You can't do this. Like, okay, well, there you go. Here's Martin's AI example that, yes, you can. Here's
Yes.
you want, two pizza size teams? No, here's a 20 size, 20 pizzas size team, 20 people working at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
it's
now
not,
they try to write better specs. They try to improve their spec-driven development process, but
mhm.
they don't fix the couplings. So this is doomed to fail. This will not work.
Yeah,
I don't even have to watch it. I know
I
for
know.
sure
I
it
know.
won't work.
It's going to be, same story, just faster. I think it's good because, people, if they actually take the time to say, okay, AI, help me create an event model first and let me see if that makes sense. And even help AI, get help from AI to tell me if it's information complete or something. You can do that. Okay, when you've actually prepared the work and actually designed the system, give it to AI and
Yeah.
see if your spec driven development through AI works finally. You'll be pleasantly
Yeah.
surprised if you actually think about what the hell you want. And
People most people have a real hard time understanding this whole modularity thing and coupling.
yeah,
Yes,
I
yesterday,
agree with you because it's all over the place. One person might see it as code to interface. Another person might see it as
yeah,
microservices. Another person might see it as like, oh, I have a lot of views in my database. That makes it easier. You
yeah.
can, a list goes on and on and on, right? About like
There's
how
no
people,
recipe. There's no recipe. If a junior developer says, "I want to write good software. I want to write modular software. How do I do it?" No idea.
yeah,
You can start here. You can start here, and all those things are wrong because it doesn't solve the root problem. And
yeah,
yesterday that was a good example. Yesterday I posted about my AI workflow on LinkedIn. And guess what? People were most so I really posted. I have this workflow. I can work with cheap models on
yeah,
commodity hardware, and all the people were, oh yeah, tell me about the hardware. Tell me about the models. But
yeah.
nobody, except for one person, was asking, why does this work?
Yeah.
Why can you use those cheap models for?
They think it's a magical combination you found. Like I
Yes,
found this one cheap
I,
model
I have
that
exactly
everyone
the right
else
model
missed.
with the right prompts and the right. No, no, nothing of that. The
Yeah,
hardware is unimportant, and the model is not really important. The modularity is the thing.
yeah,
And one person, one single person. I think about 50 comments or something, but only one person said this works because he did the hard job. He broke down the big problem into very small chunks. Said, yes, you got it. You're the only person who understands what I'm talking about.
yeah.
Great. Thank you.
That's pretty. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. And I mean, I was just writing an email before we started to our advisor Dave Thomas. Sorry, and Dave's always nice to ask how things are going and all that. And that's one of the things that I had to say. It's like, okay, well, our focus is shifting to educating people about system design than the actual implementation, because that's where the
Yeah.
biggest problem is right now. So anyone that's looking for, consulting or guidance with their stuff, prepare to really learn about the design process, because one thing that's true is that AI is speeding up how fast you can go, but like you're insinuating, you can go fast in the wrong direction too,
Yeah.
and chase things down dead ends very quickly. And unless you point the right way, you're still going to be in the, hitting the same obstacles. So yeah, yeah, spec driven development, the hot new thing that was really around for at least 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, it was Grady Booch's birthday this week, so always a good shout out to him for writing all the UML stuff and at least getting me thinking about, hey, the little diagrams you drew for your Commodore 64 stuff as a kid was the start of a good thing. And later on, discovering UML, it's like, okay, I can actually present some topics. And I think I mentioned that on, I know you're not on X or Twitter, but I mentioned
No.
it there that that this is one of the reasons why I continued to pursue event modeling because I saw system design as a fundamentally good thing, where it was painted as evil with a big design up front for so many years.
Yeah.
It's only because of UML and Grady's work that said, hey, we can have a standardized approach for design that's going to lead to better communication. And I think that was always behind the scenes what motivated me to keep going with event modeling and documenting it, and also tending to it so that it doesn't get too complex, or it doesn't get drawn out into something more complex, as Grady personally warned me about with UML 2.0, how that was taken by the consultancy industry to be something else that he wanted. Like, he wanted something else for UML. And so I think we're here with event modeling because of his contribution, and our conversations as well over the last couple of years about where things can go if you don't tend to your community and allow some people to take advantage of it. So I think we're in a good spot because we're still niche, but the people that are using event modeling are getting incredible results. And I think this slower adoption, big distraction with AI, that's fine. What happens is that those success stories are a very, very solid base for
Yeah.
a mass adoption later. And in fact, if it didn't take this amount of time, I don't think that base would have as strong as a hold in terms of what works. So I'm actually happy with the rate of growth of event modeling. Anything faster might just keep going into different distractions and side paths, where I think this is really building, especially with your book and all this. It's getting the right foundation set in the industry to be something very dependable, especially through the massive changes that are going on because of AI. And
Yeah.
this is like a beacon of hope, like a lighthouse, keeping you away from the dangerous shores during a storm. That's how I feel. Everyone,
Yeah, I think the one missing piece is the tooling.
yeah.
When we fix
Oh, on
that.
that note, I saw someone, is it Maciej? I think it's I think he's Polish, but anyway, I saw he did a really amazing front end for event modeling.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I reposted his solution on LinkedIn.
Oh, really? I will check.
Yeah, so that's really good. But our stuff is the same, and I mean, this is the best part, is that there's so many people that are seeing it, that are building their own things. And Sebastian also did an amazing job with event sourcing framework for testing things out without aggregates, right? The DCB stuff.
Yeah.
I still hate that DCB terminology. It's like
It's here. It's here to stay.
I really can't wait until just event sourcing doesn't imply aggregates or streams.
Yeah.
That would be
In a few years, that this will be gone. Then it will just be event sourcing.
yeah.
But this
And
will
I
take a
think that
little bit.
I think the DCB proponents don't see how much how hard they make it for mass adoption, because they don't realize that they're pushing the domain driven design practice in with just getting event sourcing across. So this is one of the reasons I don't want to use the DCB term as much as possible. Just like
Yeah.
event sourcing is just this. Oh, do you need streams? No, just have one continuous things. What's it called? One continuous stream of events. Don't make lots of sub streams and all that. I mean, it's still there for the people that want to do DDD, but for everyone else that wants to get going with multiple models, like we talked about, they don't need big books to read. Here's how you get going. You can visit your concurrency and scalability issues one by one and solve them, but you don't need to do any of this up front. Those, I don't know, maybe people don't see how aggregates and all these other things are premature abstractions, or abstractions in general, that favor a specific way of looking at a problem, and
Yeah.
that limits you for the other problems you're trying to solve in your own solution. So yeah, hopefully that'll like you said, hopefully in the next 2 years that won't matter. And maybe AI is the thing that solves this problem, because there'll be such a mass adoption of event sourcing that there just isn't enough DDD people to have their word in it anyway.
Yeah.
They'll keep saying what
When
they're saying, but like it won't matter.
when we talk about my vision, if that comes true, what I think will happen, I don't think you will touch the code anyway. So
Yeah,
and it
I
will,
don't think so either. Yeah,
you will model the system and whatever the system makes out of it.
exactly. I see that already as like the best thing that people could do is try to make vibe coding work, because you'll slowly understand that you need to talk about, okay, what events do I have right now? Right? How do I handle looking at the events before? There's nothing in those statements that has to do with a language or programming, right?
Yeah.
You could say that given that these things happened when I try to sign up, I get this error. Oh, okay. That still tells me what, that's the level to communicate at. Very, very
Yes.
soon we'll be there. Like I think the
Oh, I
naysayers
think
don't
we are
realize how
already there.
close we are.
Yeah, we are. We are so close, really.
Yeah, there's only a few things maybe on the UI side where the component based UI needs that level of discovery. But I think with artificial intelligence, the UI patterns will very quickly settle into how you can connect that up to your RESTful API behind the scenes to your backend to act like you want.
Yes.
And in fact, I think that's where AI has shown a lot of strength um, is the sort of UX UI flows and how you wrestle with CSS, and all these things are actually way easier now that AI is here, and that's not going to be as big a challenge as we thought. I think we personally thought that the top swim lanes on the event model for implementation were always going to be the problem. And in fact, I think they were, like, 2 years ago, up to 2 years ago,
Yeah, no
it was
longer.
still a big chunk of work to get those UIs to, you needed someone that knew React really well to make this all go really smoothly. That's gone,
Yes.
which is incredible, because it unlocks the rest of the system through,
Yeah. So what I'm doing currently, and this is really a fun experiment, you have the event model. You can provide the event model plus a custom prompt for the UI, and you can just say, okay, no, I want this component to be more on the top right. You don't do it in the code. You just do it in the
Yeah,
event model, and the
exactly.
AI takes care of it. So you don't have to touch the code,
Yeah.
and it works. It
And
works today.
I found that I don't know if you use the Gemini Canvas in
No,
Google.
no,
It's so I'll tell you why it's worth your investigation, because what you do is very similar to what you just said. When you add the canvas to the prompt, it will create an application for you right there, and you can tell it, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS plain only, no Tailwind, nothing. So it makes it
yeah,
very small, very easy to understand. You don't have to look at the code, but it'll give you a nice web page. There's a little button on the bottom right of that preview. It's an active. I mean, it can be a dynamic page. You can click on stuff. Stuff moves. It's a real page. It's a real canvas. It's a real web page. But it has a little add-in in the bottom corner, and you click on that, and you can select an area. And your next prompt says, "This can't look like this." You know what?
yeah,
I use that to get those
yeah.
arrows
It's very nice.
fixed was through Gemini, because I would, every time that you say, "Oh, just make it whatever," AI will change the rest of the solution sometimes, or redo other data points on there.
Yeah,
But with this, you get to concentrate. I said, this arrow doesn't line up correctly, and I would circle and it would just fix that. And bit by bit, within half an hour, it got all of those arrows perfect. That is a CSS nightmare, to use edges of divs to make those arrows look like they're better than in Miro. That is something that Bobby and others that tried to automate the tooling for event modeling 5 years ago, that was a mountain of a
yeah,
problem. Half an hour now. But
yeah.
like what you just said now, there's ways that, and I'm sure there'll be equivalent things in in Gemini or sorry, in Cloud Code or whatever, where you can basically break out some sort of an image, snapshot of what the solution looks like, and highlight the area
Yeah.
AI will know what you're talking about. It'll correlate what it has in the image to what the code is and make the change there. It's around the corner. But if you want to sneak peek at that using the Gemini canvas, and it's free, like you don't have to just go to Google, your regular account. This is not like anything you have to pay for. You just go to the pro setting and press the little additions and pick canvas. Say, give me a to-do list, client side only, HTML, CSS. See what it gives you, and then just highlight that little piece. Use the
Nice.
highlighting thing and just see, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There is no code to, which was my goal, was can I get the event modeling canvas the way I want it without looking at code? Because it's going to be, the future. Like there's no arguing about that. It's
Yes.
but what I think both of us are betting is that event modeling is a really good intermediate language between how solutions are articulated, actually what's going on without
Yes.
going to code. Like there is no code on the diagram behind me on purpose,
Yeah.
and we've already been in that mindset for a long time. So if you want to be AI ready, you probably should have something like event modeling to be useful in the
I
next world.
I don't know any other language that can provide that right now. So
Yeah.
I mean, I placed a pretty big bet on
Hmm.
event modeling. So it's either this or nothing.
Yeah.
That bet is set.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, event sourcing too, you need to have that
Of course.
accountability for stuff.
Of course.
I think people don't realize that having that breadcrumb trail, that accountability trail of how you got there is absolute gold. There's so much value there for um, anything, a person or AI, to know what's going on, right?
I mean,
And
it's this triplet. You have event modeling, you have event sourcing, you have slices. These three things together,
yeah,
then it works.
yeah, I think people are they're making things that are being done for AI seem like evil. Oh, you shouldn't have to do that because AI told you. You're making a mistake. No, it's quite the opposite. AI is a reflection of people. If you can make AI, especially stupid models, understand and do the work, that means you understand your system. That means you decoupled your system.
Yes.
That means you know what you're doing, and more importantly, you know how to communicate what you want. And currently, the evidence is that this industry is absolute crap because people don't have that.
I mean, you just have to look at the comments on LinkedIn. When I post what models I use,
Yeah,
most people comment, "How is that possible? Those
yeah,
models are absolute crap."
yeah.
Yeah, but it still
Well,
works.
there's a better comment someone had. Like the last 30 years of software has been AI, has been vibe coding slop.
Yes.
It's true. You look, it's all coupled, absolute horrendous messes that you see. You have the $90 million Arrive Can projects that are absolute garbage. Um, just look at any of these large, especially government projects that just burn billions of dollars, and it's absolute steaming pile of worst code ever. And they're the same people telling you that there's vibe coding slop. I'll take the AI coding slop over their work any day. I know that with an event model, AI will give me something better than any of those developers gave with
Yeah.
freedom to do what they want. So yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, like I think that was a perfect. I was laughing at that comment. Vibe coding slop has been around for decades already. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? This is nothing new. It's just all of a sudden you got a free pass because of a human slapping the keyboard instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, a million monkeys on a million typewriters, right? Yeah.
True.
Eventually, one of them will write a Shakespearean play. Oh, well, I think that is a good
I think so too.
amount of time. We're hitting an hour again, Martin. We're getting good at this.
Yes.
Getting
Yes. One
right to
hour.
an hour. Yeah,
That's
one
not.
hour exactly.
I
So
mean, we targeted. I think we targeted first half an hour. Then it was 45 minutes. I think we're circling around the hour.
I
That
think
should.
so. I think it's also Well, if I mean we talk about boring stuff, so it's also a good thing to listen to if you want to fall asleep. You can put us into your earbud in one ear as you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
Perfect. Better than any melatonin or other things you're taking. Don't need to exercise to get yourself worn out. Just listen to Martin and Adam at night. You'll have a really good
I,
sleep.
I
You'll fall asleep right away.
I hear that. I hear that quite a lot. People tell me oftentimes that they listen to my voice, my YouTube videos and stuff like that, because I seem to have such a deep voice that brings people to fall asleep.
Yeah,
Quite interesting. I don't know why that is,
yeah.
but
It's,
I
it's
don't
probably
get.
the same for me, but it's more
Yeah.
about the subject matter. It's just I'm very boring now, so their eyes just glaze over. They're ready to sleep right away. Just hearing the same stuff from me. Oh man, so bad. Okay, well, on that note, Martin, I wish you the best during this week. I think actually we're going to be working on some stuff together because of the clients that are starting to sign up. So looking forward to whenever that starts. But yeah,
Same.
lots of work coming up. So happy to be finally working on bigger stuff with you. So
All right.
yeah,
Yeah. Have a nice
until
week.
next week, everyone. Thanks for listening to us, and have a good
Take
week.
care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.